Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move to approve the minutes from our 10/15/2025 meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Mendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo.
Yes.
And I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Mendel.
Yes. Okay, do we have our treasurer's report when you're ready?
Yeah, that was fastest that's ever happened.
I know.
I know.
Oh, it's because we don't have a spotlight.
Yeah,
Will we have one in December?
Probably.
Okay. So for those of you who only turn in for 2 minutes spotlight, we will have one in November.
don't go yet, I have a riveting report.
That's the spotlight. We do have a spotlight.
That's right, you're right.
You're on.
It's up there. Mine. Okay, just make sure it's not me. My slides are really pretty this month, I have to be able to show them. Great grass.
It wants to.
They were there for a second.
They were, and then
This is the cord.
it's brand new core.
No signal.
Just a second again, and then it's gonna go away. I'm gonna go grab another cord.
While he does that, I can at least cover October, because there's nothing, new there. Slides are on the agenda if you actually would like to look at them. General fund, we started in October with 23.7 million, received 387,000, spent 2.9 million for a monthly deficit of 2.4 million with an ending cash balance of 21,300,000. This is expected. 2.4 in 1 month sounds large, but this is where we start to spend down that cash because we've received all of our taxes for the first settlement. All of our fall money, we won't start to get taxes again until the spring. So we'll spend down until the next tax settlement comes through. Month to month comparison on the general fund revenue. October revenue was very low this month. It is typically very low. It was lower than normal. And that's because if you look at our comparison to September, we received some things in September that we normally would have gotten in October. So overall, when you look at our our year to date, we are almost exactly where we were last year. Last year at this point, we had received 16,546,000. This year we've received $1,548,000. So we're almost exactly where we were this time last year. So we do expect our revenue to stay pretty flat. Expenditures, when you compare the month to month, October is down from last year. Again, part of that is because September was up a little bit, so we're kind of evening out there. When you compare the year to date, we are slightly up from where we were this point last year. We had spent 12.2 million. This year we're at 12.3, almost 12.4. So expenditures staying as flat as possible. Again, that, same thing I tell you all the time. Thank you to our staff for doing everything they can to keep things as fiscally responsible as possible. Cash balance, this is that line graph that, kind of goes up and down and shows our fluctuations throughout the fiscal year. Again, we will start to spend down our cash. We're good? Okay. Slide two then. We're starting to spend down our cash as we have in all of these past years, which are all the shades of gray. Orange is the current year. And again, we're at 21.3 for the month of October is our ending balance. Self-insurance fund, we're running about 2.6, almost 2.7. This is right around where we want it to be. We want to, maintain this around that, somewhere hovering around that 2.5 million mark. We did receive our updates for next year, and we have to take an increase of 6% on our premiums. And that is because they expect our claims to go up. So we fund this in order to have enough money in that account to cover those claims. So the calculations that we received are that we need to increase our revenues in that a little bit. As has happened in the past, if we overestimate and we're too conservative, then we can take a holiday if need be and spend that out. Right now we're running right about where we want to. Good.
With a lot of what I'm hearing, 6% does not seem very.
It's great. Everyone is in double digits. Even in schools tend to do a little better than other industries. But even in schools, a lot of surrounding schools are taking double-digit increases. So 6%, I'm very, very happy with.
Yeah.
This is our deposits and investments. Most of our money, as always, is maintained in Star, Ohio. Got about 11.3 in our investment management account, and then these accounts here are our checking accounts. Okay, any questions on October or just kind of the general finances? Okay, so with all of the conversations surrounding what's happening in Ohio, with all of the legislation, I know I've touched on individual bills, I've talked about all of those items, I've showed you where to find all of that stuff. I wanted to kind of explain how we got here. So this is just my very, very simple summarized there. This is extremely nuanced, but this is me boiling it down to as simply as I can. The state has reduced their share of education funding, which shifts that burden down to the local level. And I'm going to go into each of these a little bit in more detail, but for now, I'll get there. At the local level, so the local level has a higher burden now. At the local level, the state has reduced business taxes. So within that burden at the local level, that burden has now shifted to our homeowners and farmers. So it's shifted away from businesses. So we've already shifted down to the local. Now at the local, we're shifting more to homeowners. So the homeowners are seeing a larger burden, a larger percentage of the burden than ever before. Throw into that the fact that our system requires districts like us, who are above the 20 mil floor, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, to go back to our voters repeatedly, just to keep up with inflation. Then there are districts who are below the 20 mil floor who don't have to do that with their levies because they do get proportional increases. In the past, that has been okay. The last couple of years, however, with prices increasing at the rate that they have received fairly large income tax or property tax increases. So that's further burden on those taxpayers in those districts. Add to that these rapidly escalating home values, and it's pushing more districts because of House Bill 920. Again, I'm going to go into detail on this. Because of House Bill 920, more and more districts are hitting that 20 mil floor. So more and more districts are seeing those inflationary increases. All of that is to say the system is extremely unbalanced. Property taxpayers are paying more than their share than they have in the past. The system does need reform. Property owners do need relief. That being said, it needs to be thoughtful and it needs to take all of the different situations that our 610, 609 public school districts are in, as well as all the other entities that collect property taxes. So it's not just that we are overtaxed property tax wise, because our overall burden, we've talked about this a couple of times, Ohio's overall tax burden has gone down. It's just that it has shifted and all of the weight is coming to our property owners right now. Okay, so the first part of that, the burden being shifted away from the state down to the local level. In 1999, the state was covering over 45% of the cost of schools. Now, this is not specific to Chagrin. What I'm talking about tonight is our situation in Ohio, not Chagrin. I don't know if the state's ever covered 45% of our costs. Ours is much lower, but overall, the state was covering 45% of the cost of educating Ohio's kids. Over several years, that amount has gone down. In 22, so I have some detailed items here. I didn't pull every single year, but this is because this is where we started the Fair School Funding Plan. So in 22, you can see from 22 to 23, it went down a little bit. It did go up in 24, and that's because that's where the Fair School Funding Plan was funded. This year, this is the second year, they did not update the inputs. So when we talk about that Fair School Funding Plan and we talk about the fact that it takes what the state considers it should cost to educate a child and to provide a basic education, if you don't consider, you don't use current numbers, obviously the number is going to be a lower number. If you're using numbers from 2 years ago or 4 years ago, that number is going to be lower. So they were funding us on the lower amount. And this is expected to continue to go down over this current biennium that we've just begun. So we're at a historic low. This is the lowest it's ever been. Again, as the state's portion goes down, everybody else's portion goes up. So that burden is shifting down to the local level, and this is just to kind of show you what I'm talking about when I say that. Next part of this, when I'm talking about shifting to the property owners, these are I have some data here from 1975 all the way up to 23. In 1975, our businesses were funding almost 54% of the property tax burden, not overall school burden, but the property tax burden. As business taxes have been phased out, including the elimination of the tangible personal property tax, their tax abatements have grown significantly. The business portion has gone down to 32.5%. So our homeowners used to be covering 46%. They are now responsible for 67.5% of educating our kids in Ohio. Now, our portion is actually a little bit higher than that because we know that we only get 10% from the state. Not 10% of our revenue, but 10% of what they think that it should cost to educate and to provide a basic education. So it's even worse for us, but you can see kind of this flip-flop here. Res Ag, which is the residential agricultural, that's our property owners, are the blue, businesses are the orange. You can see they used to be higher, but it was, it was close to equal. And then it flipped, and then, the divide just gets larger. So again, burden shifting to local, within the local, burden shifting to our property taxpayers. In addition to that, House Bill 920 for districts like us. This is just an example to kind of explain this, and I know we cover this a lot. This is not a new graphic, I've provided this numerous times. But this is to demonstrate expenses go up evenly. This is a very, very simple example. But if your expenses went up the same percentage every year, this is what your expense line would look like. Revenues, when you pass a levy, it brings you to a certain level. You calculate what you need in a levy to get you through however long you want it to last. So in those first couple of years, you collect more than you spend. Then at some point, you exceed that. You start to deficit spend, which is what we're doing this year. And then in order to get that revenue to match the expenses, you have to pass a levy and collect more. It's the only way you can get your revenue up to match that and to exceed it for a couple of years, and then it just keeps going. It's like a stair-step effect. Again, this is extremely simple. This is assuming no other variables, and assuming that your expenses continue to go up at the same rate. Hopefully, in order to flatten this out, flatten this orange line out as much as possible, you do the things that we do, like looking for, continued efficiencies. What can we do better? Where can we find new ways to do things and be a little bit leaner, so that you can flatten this line out so that you don't have to look for this stair step as quickly.
And just to clarify, because people will ask this question because their taxes are going up, our revenue does go up a little bit.
Revenue goes up for new construction,
Right.
but that doesn't affect your taxes because it's just additional, it's an additional property that we're collecting on, so it doesn't affect the people already in the pool. And then for a district like us, you will go up just on the inside millage. So the majority of ours, however, is outside that, and we are above the 20 mil floor, so our rates go down as our property values go up. But the reason I have this on here is because this also continues to exacerbate the problem, because schools are constantly forced to go out to taxpayers. So it looks as if it creates levy fatigue and frustration, and when people don't understand this, because it's extremely complicated, it just looks like schools constantly have their hands out. And it's really just to keep up with inflation. Then there are the schools who are at the 20 mil floor. So the 20 mil floor in that House Bill 920, so I talk about House Bill 920 all the time because it affects us, because we are above it. So we have a higher millage rate than the 20, and as our property values go up, our rates get reduced. Our current collection rate is 44 mils is what we're collecting. So we would have quite a way to go to get down to the 20 mils. But there are districts that are at that. And as that property value goes up for these districts over the last couple of years, where it's been huge increases for these districts, it's pushed them to the 20 mil floor. Districts that have never been there, taxpayers who have never had increases that matched inflation or that matched their property value increases. So they all of a sudden are shocked by a very large increase. This is just a picture of the average valuation increases that we've seen. So, these, while they felt high to us right after COVID right here, these were pretty normal. Because we had gone down so much after the market, after 2007, 2008, property values had gone down so much. So these increases were fairly normal. They didn't feel like it because we had seen, kind of a while where the increases were not large, and then they went way up. And so those districts, you know, that got forced then down to the 20 mil floor, they'd never had those discussions about House Bill 920. They'd never needed to. People didn't need to understand it. It didn't affect their tax bill. So that has exacerbated the problem as well. So all of that is to say, yes, there is a problem. I think everybody acknowledges that. And I think, you know, we've talked about the fact before that out of the 50 states, we are in the top 10 for property taxes. We know that. But overall, we're in the bottom 10 for state taxes. So as all of our other taxes have gone down, your income taxes have gone down, it wasn't necessarily relief, it just got moved over here. And it got placed on the shoulders of school districts and other small entities. So if you are, you know, inclined to look into this, to ask further questions, I have tons of data. This was as simple as I could get it. And yes, there are probably some things in here that, you know, I could expand. I could do a probably 2-hour presentation on each one of these little blue boxes. I won't, but in here, if you go out to the agenda and you're looking at this, there are a lot of links if you are looking for more information. This even takes us out to our website, maybe, if it works. There's a document I have out here that kind of expands a little bit on Ohio school funding, how it works, how the state contribution works, and then all of these items that I touched on tonight. In addition, if you go out to our website, go to departments, treasurer, there are lots of resources out here. So an explanation of 920, our millage rates, all kinds of stuff out here if you're interested. And then the legislation that is pending, I have right here at the top of the page, a link where you can go to a table that'll kind of explain each of the individual items. There's a link on each one of these that takes you to the actual bill page. You can see where it is, what's happening, who's responsible for it, what is happening in committee,
I got
all
a
of the
question,
testimony.
from a parent today about, there was an article in the paper maybe yesterday, I'm sure you noticed, about the Cleveland Clinic selling, and they're gonna lease back 21 buildings, and one of those buildings is in Chagrin. It's on the list.
Okay.
So the question was, given the fact that that will no longer be a nonprofit owned building, how much, I know we're not gonna know a dollar amount, but just generally, the business goes down, we will get some extra tax revenue from that. Will it be a game changer?
Will it be a game changer? Not from one building, no.
Right.
Do you know if there were any abatements assigned to anything?
I don't,
Okay,
it was
I'll
just,
have to
it
look
was
into
just
it.
on the list of the 21 buildings in the article, and I believe it's the building on East Washington.
Okay.
But don't quote me, I mean, they said that that's the only Chagrin Clinic building I know of.
Okay. I will look into it, I'll find out.
And how quickly does that tax revenue hit?
So if everything is official for this, if it happens during this calendar year, it would assign to 25's valuations,
Okay.
which are taxed then in 26. But being that it's close to the end of the year, I'm not sure how that would all
Okay.
work. If it would be another year, I'm not sure, I'd have to find out from the county.
And then the other thing that might be interesting to talk about maybe next month is, I think it's House Bill 365, is that on your list? I think they were saying that it was probably gonna be assigned, that's the one that's gonna cap the growth rate of inside millage.
Oh, 335.
Or 335, okay, so it would be
Yeah.
interesting to know what that means for us, because that is the one piece that on some level keeps up with inflation.
So, yeah, so it would tie it to inflation, so it wouldn't let it go crazy.
Okay,
Which for us, you know, if you look at our overall tax increase has been minimal over the last several years. So I don't know that, I know you asked me this last week, and I started pulling some information to try to isolate what our actual increase is just on our inside millage. But being that I have two counties that do reports very differently, it's taking a little bit more time than I would like.
Well, and there's
But-
also, we talked about that piece that is the growth from the sales, so it's hard to separate out what is the inside
Yeah.
millage growth versus the, property
Yeah.
sales and new tax.
And there are, I mean, that data is out there, it's available, I can do it, it just takes a little digging.
I was
But
wondering how much that capping is going to impact versus where we are.
I don't know that ours has increased significantly more than
Okay.
inflation. I mean, it continues, it does go up each year, you get the valuation increase. Your valuation is reassessed every 3 years. So, yes, sometimes it jumps up a little bit. I don't know if they're going to, because you would get 3 years worth of inflation. I don't know if they're saying in that 1 year you can only get that year's worth of inflation, so you would lose 2 years worth of inflation. I'm not sure how that's gonna work.
And is it inflation or is it property growth?
Right,
That's,
yeah. Well, they're saying it's being tied to the GDP inflator, so
which might be a higher number.
it could be. So I don't know if it's tying it to that, or if it's limiting it by that, or, there's so many ways that they could do it, and it's not always the way I think they should.
Those are the two things I saw on the list that seemed like they might impact us as
Yeah,
opposed to general.
it would impact us, it's not gonna change our forecast, it's not gonna impact us at the, district level. An individual taxpayer they might notice it, but it's, it's not gonna make that much difference to the district.
So before we move on, I just want to take 1 minute to clarify a little bit, or to make sure that it's understood. When we say that we're looking at efficiencies when we start to deficit spend, or what does that really mean? Because that's a question that's come up quite a bit over the course of the last couple of weeks with all these questions about property tax. And I'm not sure that we've ever clearly articulated what that looks like. So even before you start deficit spending, every year, we're looking at serving the students that are enrolled in Schuchard schools and what's the highest quality education that we can provide them, because that comes at a cost, right? So every year we're looking at that, and whether you see it or don't see it, we're making adjustments. So things like we may not fill a position that might be vacated by a retirement. Right, so that's attrition, we're taking that in and we're absorbing that position because maybe we can somehow reorganize to be able to cover. So that kind of thing happens often. Sometimes you look at enrollment to say, there's only 2 students signed up for this elective. Maybe we could offer this elective every other year instead of every year. Because if we offer it every other year, we still know it's important for our students. That would be 6 kids, maybe we would have the next year instead of 2 for this year. So those kinds of decisions are made so that we can do that. When we look at things like supplementals, right, student enrichment, or we look at some of those clubs, those kinds of things, we not only look at what is the interest of our students, what's the capacity of us to cover those supplementals, but also what is driving what our students need for their desired future for the pathway moving forward, which is what that school links, and we'll have Jared come back and present on that, will be really powerful, because now we can actually vertically track and align what's going on 612. That happens every single year, because our goal is to either be flat or to reduce if possible. Well, we're not always able, because something may come up and you might have to add a few more educational assistants for some specific reason, things like that, or there's a curriculum change that you didn't anticipate that year that bumps up costs. So we look at all of that. But then you hit this point of deficit spending, which is what Ashley's been talking about every single month and what we've been looking at. And those are the times when now we have to sit down as a district and say, okay, we may need to make some bigger adjustments. Because we also have a responsibility to try to be as efficient and as lean as possible. And with all of the districts around us having the same kinds of concerns, are there ways to work together or to combine if there are smaller groups of kids that might want to take a course, or are there ways that we can be more efficient? that we haven't looked at before. And part of that is really analyzing what our students need and how we're gonna sustain this high-quality education. And so those conversations get a little deeper and they get a little more focused on what we might need to shed, if you will, to be able to cut down on some of that cost to slow spending. And so I just wanted to step in and to be able to say that, because I'm not sure that that piece is ever clearly articulated to the amount of work behind the scenes that goes on to ensure every year there are changes and they're made on financial decisions and they are fiscally responsible. But sometimes we may have to even make a few more or look at it because we're starting to get in that deficit state.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at right now. And the complexity of all of this is typically when you're looking at deficit spending, you know how you're funded. So you know exactly, or you know what's coming down the pike when you get that to your budget, so that you're able to know how to adjust and how much, and so that we're not impacting the education of our students, or the minimal impact. And where we're at right now, what we talk about is the complexity of not knowing what our funding is going to look like. And so that's why we need the support and the help, and that's why you need to go to the Treasurer's website and to be able to look and understand the impact of every single bill on our district. And that's why we can't give a clear plan to say, this is exactly the funding and how we anticipate being funded and what those are. There's too many variables. But it doesn't impact the district's work on being efficient and recognizing that we are starting to deficit spend, and are there more ways to shrink, to slow that spread.
And it's not a conversation that started this year because we are starting to deficit spend. It's a conversation that starts, every year when we throw that forecast out one more year, we know when we're gonna start to deficit spend. We know that, or we estimate that the day we pass the last levy, you start to estimate when it's gonna happen, because you ask for enough to get you a certain number of years. So, and I think I've talked about it before, there are districts that go for higher millage and they collect more to stretch that levy period longer. So you can ask for higher millage, make it longer, or you can ask for smaller millage, make your levy cycle shorter. And that's one of the things that we were concerned with the cash balance provision that they were looking at in the budget that got vetoed, which could still pass.
You say, what is that?
That was one of the problems, and one of our issues is because we're a district that in the past has passed higher millage and made it last longer. We're not a district that asks for 2 mills every 2 years. It's not what we do. It's just not efficient. So there are districts that have to do that. It's just that's what their taxpayers are used to. So it's not a conversation that waits until we hit that deficit spend mark. It's a conversation that's happening all the time, every day. And we know, before the last levy was passed, okay, if this levy passes, here's what we have. We're planning, out several years. We know when we're gonna start deficit spending. We're estimating it. We're 2 years past where we thought we'd be to start this deficit spending. So, and that's all because of looking for those items. And, sometimes I am a little too conservative as well on some of my estimates just to be safe. So we've done, we do our best to estimate what's gonna happen, and then the future happens, and
We do our best to ensure that the highest quality education is offered at all times, and that you don't feel any bump, and all we do is continue to be innovative and be at the top trend for the state, and even in some cases, the nation, for what we're doing, because that's what we aspire to do, and we're not willing to sacrifice that.
the last thing we wanna do is surprise you or our community with where we're going or what's happening.
Can I just say, I think I really appreciate tonight just the insightfulness and thoughtfulness you both have brought to this conversation. Like, Ashley, you just mentioned when you were presenting this that those blue boxes were simple, or as simplified as you can make them. And I think that that's what people need right now. I need that when it's this amount of information and when there's this amount of uncertainty happening. I want information that's easy to digest, and I just wanna say, like, that last box, but your last sentence here, that we need responsible, thoughtful reform. I'm really appreciative that you leaned into that message and that we're acknowledging that for our
Thank you,
community
absolutely. I
members.
don't think anybody's denying
No, but
that
it's nice
something needs to be done.
to be heard, and to have that out there. And then I don't think that we've ever had that amount of transparency, at least for my time on the board, having that discussion about what it looks like behind the scenes for deficit spending and having that communication out there. So I just want to say, like, thankful for this conversation. Yeah, we need that during these uncertain times.
These unprecedented times,
Everything's unprecedented.
everything, yeah.
That's my time.
Do we have anyone signed up for public participation? Oh, thanks, Mom.
Anybody out there want to talk?
I don't think so.
I
Is
don't
anyone-
believe so.
no, okay, I think we're good. I don't think anybody signed up. All right. Okay, next up are superintendent recommendations. Can I move to approve items 5.01 through,
No, this is not a
It's not
consent.
consent.
oh wait,
Just
recommendations.
5.01.
I was gonna go one by one at a time, sorry about that. Okay, so I move to approve superintendent item 5.01. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So we always approve student enrichment activity supplemental contracts. I just want to clarify, someone asked me if this was new and I said no, but that wasn't completely accurate because yes, it's new, but no, it's not an additional supplemental contract. So what happens at our building levels are that principals look at the enrollment, the interest, the need, as well as the staffing, the coaching availability to offer a program. Then they design what they want their enrichment programs to be. Often we have the same ones going on, but sometimes there's a need to switch out or to change. And so when that happens, our principals also collaborate with like our student advancement team to make sure that things are appropriate for what we want our kids to do vertically and that it's aligning with the needs. So this is technically a different club, but not an additional supplemental contract.
Okay, Ashley?
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bortner.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.22, which is an application for student enrichment activity, proposing FTC robotics competition participation. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bortner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.03 with some reluctance. This is a motion for retirement. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So if it's okay, I'm going to walk to the mic only because this person deserves to make sure that it's on the video. And since I don't have a mic and I really don't have a voice, if that's okay, I don't want this person not to have it recorded with audio because sometimes we hear our audio doesn't work.
It actually is picking up really awesome.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I haven't got any text that I'm not being heard, so as long as it's working, I'll scoot down. I just want to make sure this one makes the YouTube, right? The YouTube?
Yes.
Okay.
The interwebs.
I had to write this out, so I'm gonna follow my script. Tonight, we recognize and celebrate the retirement of a leader who has shaped our district in profound ways. We honor a leader whose influence has been felt beyond his title. For nearly 14 years, Chris Woofter has served Chagrin Falls schools with a kind of leadership that is steady and deeply principled. Chris is the person who listens fully before he speaks, who asks a thoughtful question, and who brings history, context, and purpose into every decision. He leads from a place of integrity and conviction, ensuring that what we do aligns with what we believe. In his role overseeing operations and human resources, Chris has shaped systems, strengthened our facilities, and supported the recruitment of talented staff. But anyone who knows him understands that his greatest contribution has never been about projects or processes. It has been the way he supports people, intentionally and without seeking recognition. He is an encourager, a stabilizer, and often can be the quiet anchor in the room. Chris leads with empathy and a deep sense of responsibility to his community. He notices what others miss. He connects the past and the future and helps people feel grounded, capable, and a part of something meaningful. And he has done all of this while holding an unwavering belief in the potential of students, staff, and the collective we that makes this district exceptional. After 32 years in public education, Chris is retiring with the same humility and gratitude that have defined his entire career. He often says that people matter more than programs, and he has lived that value every single day. Chris, on behalf of the Board of Education and the entire Chagrin Falls School community, thank you for your service, your steadfast leadership, your care, and the way you have helped us live our mission and honesty with purpose. We wish you joy, rest, and a new adventure in the years ahead. Your presence will be missed, and your impact will continue to guide us for a long time to come. I know it's not until February, but thought we should put it in now.
That was beautiful.
I've got, got a little something I want to say too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Chris was the principal at the intermediate school when my youngest daughter was there. And the first time I ever saw him, I was driving her to school in a torrential downpour. I mean, it was just, you could barely see, the windshield wipers were going like crazy. And I came up East Washington to turn left onto Philomethian, and there was a man with this really awful umbrella that's kind of broken over his head in a soaking wet top coat, in a full suit, out there clearly thanking the crossing guard and greeting the students at the corner of Philomethian and East Washington. And I get choked up thinking about it because I can see it so clearly, and it just exemplifies his commitment to students, his commitment to people. It was just this moment when I thought, oh, that's incredible. I wonder who that crazy guy is. And this is why we live in Chagrin Falls, right? I mean, this is the kind of commitment with the kids and the teachers, the commitment from the teachers, and those moments, those personal moments you remember as a parent. So, thank you.
And Chris just wrote such a lovely letter informing us of his retirement. I just wanted to amplify his words a little bit because I thought they were really powerful. Just short excerpt. He said, "When I first joined this district as a principal of Chagrin Falls Intermediate School, I wrote a short list of beliefs that guided my work. They centered on honesty, collaboration, the potential of every student, the courage to innovate, and the conviction that people matter more than programs. 14 years later, these convictions have only deepened. The heart of Chagrin Falls Schools beats in the shared belief that anything worth doing is worth doing well, a phrase my father often repeated. That spirit of excellence is not prideful, but purposeful. It honors our community." And he said, "Thank you for allowing me the privilege to serve in a district that embodies excellence, not as a slogan, but as a way of life. It's been the honor of my career to share in this work." So thank you so much for your kind words and all your years of service. We'll miss you very much.
I guess we have to take the roll.
I guess you do. Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes,
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, item 5.04, I move to approve item 5.04, which is staff resignations as presented. Do I have a second?
A second?
Ashley?
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes,
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo.
Yes.
And Connie's moving, correct? Okay.
I move to approve item 5.05, which is for long-term substitutes, approving long-term substitutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes. I move to approve item 5.06, which is for additional hours. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.07, which is a motion to approve salary increases due to verification of additional coursework for the 2025-2026 school year. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So just to clarify, in case there's question, in the teacher contract, you can move based on the coursework that you're taking. So sometimes we have to reclassify their salaries based on the coursework that is submitted. Does that make sense?
Ashley?
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.08, which is a motion to approve the following substitute teachers on an as-needed basis, contingent upon them meeting all requirements. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Those were day-to-day substitutes. I move to approve item 5.09, which is a motion to approve the following classified substitutes on an as-needed basis, contingent upon them meeting all requirements. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.10, which is a motion to approve classified staff contracts as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So this is where Lauren had mentioned that Connie will be moving to the high school and that Nikki, who is one of our educational aides, will be moving to the administrative assistant. So you saw them resign earlier in the agenda, they're actually still employed, just in a different role.
Got it. Ashley?
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes. I move to approve item 5.11, which is to approve the following classified staff for additional hours. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.12, which is a correction to the supplemental service contracts for 2025-2026 as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.13. This is a motion to approve volunteers contingent upon meeting all requirements. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.14. This is a motion to approve the contract with PSI for nursing services for the Washington DC trip, November 5th to 7th as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second. But this already happened, right? It just changed the rate. I second.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.15. This is a contract to approve the 2026 custom cardstock pocket folder contract with school districts as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes. I move to approve item 5.16. This is a motion to approve the contract with Music Theater International. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.17. This is a motion to approve the contract with Ohio Mobile Gaming for game rental equipment for June 2nd, 2026 as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.18, this is bus routes, for 2025-2026. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So this is a housekeeping item in the sense that we need to approve this every year. Typically, you'll see it on in the August or September agenda, but with transition, it wasn't on. So just going back and making sure that everything is approved and we rechecked everything before submitting.
Great. Do I have a second? Or I got a second. Do I,
Yep, you got
Ashley will take the roll.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner, Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
I move to approve item 5.19. This is a motion to approve the following payments for community education programming. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo.
Yes.
Okay, Ashley, we've got a couple of treasury recommendations. Do you want me to go through these one at a time and make a motion and we can talk about them? Or- Okay. I move to approve item 6.01, that's the then and now certificates. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
These are items that, for which the invoice date preceded the purchase order date. Either the purchase order did not get submitted on time, or it took time to get it approved. Sometimes somebody will submit their requisition, then place their order, forgetting that they need to wait on the purchase order. And sometimes things get automatically renewed. As much as we try to fight all of those things and make sure that things do not auto renew, oftentimes they do. So then we have to go in and put the purchase order in after the fact. So, any questions on any of those? Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes. And then I move to approve item 6.02, the financial reports. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner.
Yes.
Any other business? Any public participation on a non-agenda item? Okay.
I move to enter into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22 for the sole purpose of the consideration of the following matters. To consider one or more as applicable of the checkmarked items with respect to a public employee or official. Checkmarked are employment, discipline, and compensation of a public employee or official. And also preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Do I have a second?
I'll second. And we will not take action after the meeting, or after executive session.
Announce the next meeting.
Oh, thank you.
December 10th.
Our next meeting will be here in the high school library. We think we will have a student showcase, and it will be on December 10th.
Executive session, Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mr. Bordner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy.
Yes.